Do you like chicken? Do you like it with brine? Do you know the difference of chicken that is brined and unbrined? And what is brining anyway? The Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries issuing changes to the regulation on the sale of poultry, and it's ruffled a couple of feathers. Ha ha. Brining is a way of marinating and adding moisture to lean meat like chicken, and for years poultry producers have been injecting their chickens and chicken pieces with as much as 30% brine to create those nice big juicy chunks of chicken that we like to see on our supermarket shelves. But we don't like to think that we're eating some kind of preservative. So we've got the new regulations coming into force. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight I'm talking about the consequences and the details of how this new limit on brining with the South African Poultry Association Chief Executive Kevin Lovell, how the new limit is going to affect not only the poultry producers but also the size and ultimately, and more importantly for most of us, the cost of chicken. So, Kevin Lovell, the regulation is now 15% maximum of the slaughtered weight of a bird can be brine.
The product. So in a kilogram of product, 85% will be meat, 15% brine. Now for the main product, the 2 kilogram, 5 kilogram bags, it's between 25 and 30%. So you're going from 70 to 75, you're going to 85. That's the change.
Okay, let's get a little bit grotesque about this. We in the slaughterhouse, the chickens get hung up by their feet, their heads hang down. There's a process by which the heads are chopped off, the feathers are removed, the extremities are removed, and there you've got the unbrined chicken carcass. How does it work?
Well, so once a chicken's slaughtered, it gets chilled, and there are different ways of cooling it down, and that's for safety reasons. You can then sell the chicken as a whole fresh. You can even freeze it at that point. You can cut it up into portions. You can sell it as frozen portions. The moment you freeze it, you change its texture. So brine does 3 things.
So brine is introduced then before freezing?
Before freezing.
Yes.
It must be before freezing. In fact, you want the bird quite cold to get a better distribution in the bird. So you do it for 3 reasons. It makes the texture pretty much the same as fresh. It makes it taste better. Those of you who eat lemon and herb or peri-peri or rotisserie chickens, you're all eating brine chicken. So don't think it's only a product for the poor, quote unquote. And then the third thing it does is it makes the product cheaper, because we don't sell the water, or rather the retailers don't sell the water at the price of meat.
Now hold on a second. I mean, they're selling chicken per gram. I'm paying per gram.
Correct.
If 15% of the weight of that product is made up of brine, I'm paying for the brine, surely.
No, if you go into the supermarket, and don't go into the fancy one across the road from where you are, but go to the one where most South Africans shop, because most South Africans are poor. And you've just had the Statistician General here explaining about how that poverty might extend into the future. They're buying these brine portions for between 20 and 21 rand a kilogram, 40 to 42 rand a pack.
And chicken fresh is selling at 50
No, well,
plus.
if you buy the sort of equivalent portions, you'll get it between, if you're lucky, 33 to 40 rand. So you're getting basically, at the 40 rand, you're basically getting you're paying double the price. Now obviously the fresh portions are 100% chicken, the IQF's only 70% chicken. When you inject it, by the way, you also dilute the amount of bones in it, and people don't eat bones. So the best way...
you inject brine into a bird and it dilutes the bones. Explain.
A chicken is meat and bone.
Yes.
So when you inject it, you've reduced the proportion of meat, but you're also reducing the proportion of bone.
Right.
Because it's a proportional ratio. So what it means is that the cheapest way to buy chicken meat in South Africa is to buy frozen 70-30 IQF. Nothing else gets close.
Frozen 70-30 IQF in English is
the current 2 kilogram and sometimes 5 kilogram mixed portion bags that most South Africans buy. Most South Africans eat 1 cooked meal a night, and they eat, although we have lots of shish and yam or grilled meat, it's mostly a casserole stew type thing, a sheshebo dish. And this suits the current incomes of South Africans, because they stretch it by adding in sauces and things. So everyone gets something meaty and something hot to go with the rest of the things they have for dinner. And that's what the risk is. If you make it unaffordable, add 7 rand to the 2 kilogram pack. That's the price increase. Just under 6 rand 90 if you want to be very specific. That means that will people still say, I can't buy this, I have to buy something else. And everything else they can buy except eggs costs more, or has less protein in it, more fat, more salt, and sometimes doesn't even have balanced amino acids other than eggs. So in other words, there's no better choice for poorer South Africans than the current product.
What is in the brine? Because brine sounds like something that comes from the bottom of a barrel.
Well, it's not something you'd have with your whiskey at night because it would change the taste. But it's a composite term. What you go and buy in a rotisserie, or viewers might buy in a rotisserie, that's a butter-based brine. What you're getting in the fast food products tends to be a salt-based brine. Some of them are butter-based as well. What you buy in these 2-kilogram bags is a salt-based brine. So it's got a little bit of salt in it.
So it's water. It's basically a solution weaker than seawater.
Yeah, it's got a few other things in it as well. There's some flavouring agents and some herbs and spices.
And is any of that disclosed to the public when you buy the bag of frozen chicken? Do I know exactly which E numbers are included in it?
You know all that stuff in descending order. Does it mean anything to you? We did some consumer research with the target market, not with the high-end market, and what we found is that people don't actually. They look at the bags, but they look at the bags for a physical examination. They see how many pieces, the right kind of pieces. They have preferences of a certain cut, and does it look like it's been treated well? It hasn't got like a crust around it, and then the price. They put all those together and they buy it. So we asked a couple of thousand people, what do you know about brining? And unfortunately, very few actually understood what it was, but they all liked the product.
Okay, so brining, you got the chilled chicken. It's sitting naked on the table in front of you. You get a syringe full of brine, and you inject it into the bird.
Marinate, by the way. You can do all sorts of things.
But on an industrial scale, that seems very labour-intensive and quite time-consuming. How does the process actually work?
It's actually a whole set of brick in the wall, a whole set of needles that go through in a chamber. Any of the brine that doesn't get going actually gets collected and purified, and some of it gets reused. And it goes from there into the freezer.
Brining got a bad name.
Oh, yes.
5 or 6 years ago, there was an outfit near Bloemfontein that was taking year-old carcasses
and
that were no longer
them.
fit for human consumption, defrosting them, if you're going to refreeze, rebrining the birds, and then refreezing and packaging them and selling them at a discount, but to a market that is not necessarily aware of the risks of defrosting and freezing poultry again. Brining's got a bad rep.
Reworking should have got the bad rep, not brining, because the issue that was about is, should you do this with old product? Now, there was a legal loophole that allowed for it to be done. There are many legal loopholes all over the place. Ask any clever lawyer or accountant. But so that should have really been a debate about the process of reworking. It shouldn't have been a debate about the process of brining. Unfortunately, the two got conflated. So what's happened in South Africa is many people who are competitors to the poultry industry, and even within the companies, they use this as a good tool to try and actually push their own case. Because the less competitive we are as an industry, the easier it is for them to compete in their respective market segments. And this is actually all about business competition. I think it's important to note that DAFF themselves have finally acknowledged it's not a health issue.
DAFF?
The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. You did mention them earlier, but you gave the long name.
I did, I'm sorry. I'll use DAFF in future.
Okay, well, it's close to DORF, but you may not say
that. No.
But I'm old enough to be DORF, so that's fine.
Now, so here we got the regulation. Up as much as 30% of chicken contained brine.
Yes.
If brine is so good and brine is so wonderful and brine adds so much flavour and juiciness to chicken portions, why regulate the amount of brine?
We asked for it in 2006.
But why?
Because we want it controlled. We don't want it limited. We want people to be able to say with certainty, when I go and buy that stuff, it is what it says on the bag. And so what we want is a continuous, permanent, what the industry has to pay for, monitoring process. We want specific methods that can work. So our dispute with these regulations is not simply about the percentage. That's one of the issues. Actually, they don't work. They're invalid. They're unlawful. Okay. They also treat the fast food industry differently to the retail industry, and that doesn't seem fair either, because both industries are serving. If you cook yourself, why should you be treated differently if you go and buy pre-cooked food? So those are the main issues. How do we get up with a regulation that will make sure that consumers can feel 100% certain I'm getting what I paid for?
Yeah, I mean, a piece of frozen chicken should be a piece of frozen chicken, whether
Correct.
you're having it at Nando's, at KFC, or whether you're having it at home.
One of the fancy places in your backdrop.
Yeah, no, one of these posh fancy places, but I think they would use only fresh, those fancy places. Well, that's
organic as well.
Well, that's what they would charge you for. Yes. So is there a fight coming then over this regulation?
Well, there's going to be a review. I don't call it a fight, because unfortunately the only way we can correct it is to go through and show that it's not rational.
So what do you want changed?
What we want changed, firstly and foremost, is that all of the measurement methods actually can work. that it doesn't discriminate between different sectors of the industry, that there's a formal permanent monitoring in all plants, and that includes product that's imported or product that's further processed once it leaves a plant. And we want the percentage for portions to be 25%. The current percentage for whole birds is 8%. It's gone up to 10%. It's such a small market that we don't think that's worth fighting about. The people, by the way, in the rotisserie chicken industry, they're not happy because they use more than 10% at present. So they might also choose to fight that, for all that I know.
How is this complicated then with the whole AGOA issue and the imports of American chicken into the South African market? Because the politicians are having a field day, of course, over the South Africans being poisoned by foreign birds.
Well, some of the politicians say, of course, that it's actually good and healthy. What's important to understand with AGOA is that we as an industry supported the renewal of AGOA, and we supported the 65,000
But the standards are different coming in. You bring in
that's where
chicken of a
the
different
problem.
standard.
So where our problems come with where we are with AGOA at the moment are actually threefold. The one is we didn't agree to the lowering of human health standards, which is the salmonella issue. We didn't agree to the lowering of animal health standards for avian influenza. There's a special protocol for that. And we also feel that government's promises to look after our interests in exchange for what we offered up for AGOA haven't yet come to fruit. So we've got three concerns. We were happy to give you AGOA, government, but you had to give us something else that made our lives better. We haven't got that. So we are going to suffer.
So it is a fight.
No, it's peaceful.
It's a disagreement.
Yes.
Okay, it's a vigorous disagreement.
It's an intellectually precise disagreement, I would hope, but it's a disagreement.
Okay, so you are at a stage of disagreement. What is the process from here then? How do you exercise that disagreement and get to some kind of happy medium? Because this chicken story has been dragging on for an awfully long time.
I know, and there's so many more important things to do in one's life, you would think, but unfortunately this could cost us. It depends on how the market reacts, but in the first year that could cost the industry about 1.4 to 1.8 billion rand. That's a lot of money just to throw away for no good reason. You see, if you were being regulated because there was a problem with the product, then it would make sense. Well, you shouldn't have got that money in the first place.
But this is incredibly bad PR for the poultry industry. I mean, right now I'm sort of thinking, where can I get a box of day-old chicks and put them in my backyard and grow my own?
You can. I mean, and at least it's legal. If you grow your own other stuff, sometimes
yes, exactly.
It's not legal.
But it doesn't do the poultry industry any good.
No, it doesn't. And I think we've suffered from a PR and a communications point of view, because the import industry has done a very good job of making themselves out to be the small guy. Now, in fact, at the free on board level, in other words, when it comes to South Africa, they were importing about 4.3 billion rands worth of chicken last year. They're not a small industry. They're actually a big industry. They're a concentrated industry, as with the local producers, but they're not small. But they've done very well at presenting a case that we're awful. And I think most people intuitively don't like big, whatever big is. So because the poultry industry is big and industrialized, that's why it's so popular all around the world. It's either the biggest meat in the world now over pork, or about to become the biggest meat, depending on which analyst you work from. And it's both of those meats grew because they were industrialized. And so beef sort of disappearing, not quite disappearing, but it's falling in the relevance scale. So it's easy to criticize big, and we are big. We more than half of the protein.
When do we get resolution? I need to wrap up.
When we get resolution is when a court says, Daff, you need to rethink. That's when we get resolution.
And what is the time frame on that? 12 months?
We need to sort it out before they become effective, which is in October this year.
Okay. So there's time pressure. Kevin Lovell, Chief Executive of the South African Poultry Association. It's not a fight, it's a disagreement, an intellectual disagreement, but certainly feathers will fly. Have a very good evening. Good night.